Knowing and understanding are very different things. When I come across a new term in an article or a book, in most cases, I only know and not yet understand. Unless I practice it along with good guidance, I may not increase my understanding.
Hey everyone, my name is Henry Suryawirawan, and you're listening to the Tech Lead Journal, the show where I'll be bringing you the greatest technical leaders, practitioners, and thought leaders in the industry to discuss about their journey, ideas, and practices that we all can learn and apply to build a highly performing technical team and to make an impact in your personal work. So let's dive into our journal. Hello everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the Tech Lead Journal with me, your host Henry Suryawirawan. Before we start today's episode, if you have been enjoying this podcast so far, it will mean a lot for me if you subscribe and leave a review of your favorite episodes wherever you listen your podcast from. Tech Lead Journal is also available for you to follow on multiple social media such as LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Every few days, I post inspiring quotes from the amazing guests in the available episodes, and in the future, you can also get new updates about the podcast from there. You can also leave your feedback directly on TechLead Journal website at techleadjournal.dev/feedback. Feedback is a gift, and I appreciate if you can leave me any comments or any suggestions, including any potential guests that you would like to have here in this podcast. So, in this episode, I had the opportunity to discuss with Stanley Lau, one of the early leaders of the Agile Singapore community. I met Stanley from the Agile meetups and subsequently at various workshops that he organized, inviting various world-class thought leaders to come to Singapore to share their knowledge and wisdom. Ultimately, Stanley was also able to pull off multiple successful Agile conferences, and I still remember from all these conferences, I had the chance to see several of these thought leaders on stage, people like Martin Fowler, Ken Beck, Michael Feathers, and many others. I even had few opportunities to take some pictures with them, which I forever cherish in my memory. So I fully appreciate of what Stanley has done to the growth of Agile community in Singapore and also around this region. In this episode, we discussed about Stanley's career journey and the unique culture of Odd-E, the company where he's currently working at. Stanley also shared his view on the current Agile state and some misconceptions that are arising in the industry nowadays, and even suggested on how we can bring Agile adoption back to its essence. So, I hope all of you enjoyed this episode with Stanley Lau. Hey, Stanley. Thanks for spending your time on TechLead Journal. I know Stanley since a few years back when we all have Agile conferences going on in Singapore. And also I met Stanley a few times in training with thought leaders from around the world. So Stanley also helped to bring those kind of thought leaders to Singapore to help conduct workshops. And I attended some of them, get to know Stanley a little bit more. And today I'm really happy to have Stanley to be part of this episode. And I hope we can learn from Stanley a lot.
Thank you, Henry.
So, Stanley, one thing that I read about your career, right, is that you have a very interesting journey. I read one in Odd-E page where it mentioned that you used to think that your career as a developer would be stuck and then you have to go to become a manager in order to progress. But you decided that you want to try something else, in which what you're doing at Odd-E. Could you tell me a little bit of the thought process behind that and what have you learned based on that decision?
Sure. So I'll need to go back into history. That is about, I think in 2004, I was out from the army in Singapore military, and I got a diploma in information technology. And I'm also beginning my part-time studies in computer science because I didn't want to take a full-time. Otherwise, I would not have enough practical experience. So I decided to work directly at that time as a software developer. After I worked through about 3 companies like Motorola and small company and a larger company of various domains, I saw some common patterns that people around me, my peers who graduated with me on computer science or in IT, eventually they went out of this field. And for those that remain in this field, they try to get into managerial positions. They will tell me that you cannot be a programmer forever. You eventually need to become a manager. Or at that time, the popularity is project manager. And otherwise, most of my friends went out to outside IT field. They went to real estate, financial domains. They become more business oriented. And part of the reasons is also because it is very hard working as a software developer. Often you need to work long hours, firefighting endlessly. So I didn't really accept that this is how software development should be. I think there are other ways that there are other companies that approach software development differently and in a more growth manner. There's a lot of learning and then making things better. Early in my career, I tried to look for mentors, people who I can learn better practices from. And after 3 companies, I stopped finding because I realized that there isn't one in Singapore. So therefore, I needed to take this responsibility myself to learn what are the better practices on the internet. So at that time, there is the serverside.com, very early days. Java is popular. You also have the .NET platform that is also very popular. And gradually, server-side also posts articles about practices like clean code, unit testing, test-driven development, which I don't really understand at that point in time what those things means. So then later on, there is also this website called infoq.com. They post a lot more variety of practices and also technologies. I pick up Clean Code book and I learn, I enjoy it. The more I read, then the next book I went up to is Domain-Driven Design. It opened up my eyes. There is so much more to software development than just code and fix and then pray that it works in production. So since then, I've been learning myself some of the technical practices like refactoring, like unit testing. Eventually, I know myself I hit the limit. This is the most that I can learn myself, self-learn from the articles on the internet. That was in 2008, I think. So I thought maybe there is some courses in Singapore that teach TDD, test-driven development or refactoring. So I searched and there's none. The closest I can get is how to be an architect, all the documentation and processes. I wasn't really interested into that, but I thought maybe this is how software development is. Eventually need to go there. There is a forum in Yahoo groups. There's this guy named Bas Voda. And he is doing a course in Singapore called Scrum. I thought it's scam. It sounds like scam. What's interesting is his profile is interesting. He is the co-author of CPP Test, which is a unit testing framework for C++. And he's giving this Scrum Master course, like a master of scam. So I don't really care about what this course is, but I want to meet this person and see what I can learn from. When I attend this course, it opened up my perspective. It broadened. It's like a whole new horizon just emerged. There is so much about company dynamics and also practices that I tried to encourage my peers at that time, my colleagues. Like I still remember over the cubicle, I told my colleague, no, Clean Code book, this is very, very interesting. No, you need to read it. Then he would say that read books. I only read newspapers in toilet. I don't read books. So, no, I mean, that's the first form of what I learned as resistance. I don't know what to make out of that. Is it sarcastic or what? No, I didn't really bother. So I tried to encourage my peers at the time about what I read. So Bas Voda, through his Scrum Master course, I learned that he is not only good at technical practices or understanding product development at technical level, but also how he relates the code base. The shape of a code base relates to the problems in organization. So if you want to make any changes in organization, you need to learn about all the dynamics that is weaved together that relates with each other. He has a lot of Amazon reviews on books. So I went to search all his reviews that are 4 to 5 stars. I will buy all of them. And very soon my cubicle is full of books. And then my colleague would say, no, Stanley, what happened to you? No, suddenly you have a lot of books on your shelf. I think these are books I like to read. In Chinese, you call it Kung Fu Manual, that is secret manual. These have the answers. So going back to your question, my quest of finding a mentor led me to discover the ins and outs of product development and led me to the interest of helping others to be better problem solvers. Thus, in the past decade, I decided to mostly focus on coaching, mentoring, and training.
I found also Odd E is one of the unique companies in which you have different set of working process, different set of culture. Maybe you can share with the listeners here about what's so unique about Odd-E that you think worth to share with everybody.
I will share a story first before I explain the concept. When I joined ODE, I asked Bas how many days of annual leave I have. He asked back, "How many days do you usually have?" I replied the same number as my ex company at the time, and he said, "Okay." I regretted immediately. He also told me a bunch of things which I didn't really understand at that time, but I thought was cool. Like, you decide your own title, there is no hierarchy, and manager. It was later then I realized there is no HR in Audi and no one keeping track of your annual leave. You decide how you want to work and be responsible for the organization and working with each other. So Buzz founded Audi as an experiment to see what will happen if the organization is based on principles of self-managing teams. We have no hierarchy, management structure, or centralized control. Though he is the founder, he is not the boss of the company. There is no manager. Within each team, there is also no structure, but together they do have a responsibility for their profit and loss. They will make their own decisions about basically everything, like which clients to work, how to deal with finances, and how we set our own salary. So you can imagine each team is like a company, and it is also usually its own legal entity. Instead of having company values, we have the opposite, what we never do. For example, Audi never does performance appraisals, never optimize only for profit and growth, never hire people because we have work, and never gives up writing code. So it has been a decade, and we have now more than 10 teams located in different parts of the world. Every half yearly, we have a gathering at some location and spend a week exchange learnings and write code. Although now times have changed, I'm not sure when we will be able to do that again, but we will see. So there are challenges with the corporate and accounting practices on Audi because it assumes an ownership model where someone is in control. So if you think of ACRA, which is Singapore's authority for accounting and corporate practices, you must have a director and shareholders and so on and so forth. That is what we thought of as an ownership model. We actively not let that influence how we want to work. And if you think about it, it is easy for any organizations to be influenced by how corporate practices want them to work. One of the reasons people join Audi is because we dislike how most organizations are run. I guess this makes Audi quite unique.
Thanks for sharing that. It's pretty unique. In your point of view, having seen the corporate world and having worked now with this kind of culture, like set your own salary, no appraisal, you do what you want to do, and you own your profit and loss, right? What are the key big difference that you think are beneficial for people to at least know and acknowledge that this kind of working model might work?
Right at the core, Audi is designed with the acknowledgement that people want to learn and be better. So what we say and do are congruent. It is different from most companies where they expect you to be better, but have structures and policies that backfire. I believe people have good intentions, but because of the organization rules that accumulates over time, influences people's behavior and dehumanize the workplace. Over time, you come in terms with how the organization play games and you work within the box. Until you join one of Bas Voters courses, you may either become aware of yourself being in the box that wants to get out and improve, or defend yourself to keep yourself in the box. For those that wants to improve, the enthusiasm usually lasts for a couple of weeks before the force field molds you back to the shape of the box. If the organization doesn't improve, your accumulating frustration will lead you to leave the company. It is not uncommon to hear these stories from our students when they know what can be better. I don't suggest all organizations should follow Odd-E model. If I start a cafe shop or an HR software product company, I would manage it differently because the context is different. However, concepts like self-managing can be useful, especially in product development. And it doesn't mean you cannot have managers. On the other hand, there is nothing new to these concepts that I mentioned. There are many evidence-based studies done on this area. There is a book called Abolishing Performance Appraisals, which shows how and why traditional processes backfire and what to do differently. There is the principle of beyond budgeting, the idea of abolishing traditional budgeting processes because of its inherent flaws. Numerous studies on the importance of growing real teams and team coaching to create a learning organization. And more recently, actually 5 years ago, Yves Morel gave an insightful TED talk on how too many rules at work keep you from getting things done, which highlights how overload of rules, processes, and metrics keeps us from doing our best work altogether. So why would a software developer care about this? There is a high chance that performance appraisals, traditional budgeting, traditional processes, department silos, managed by control, thinking of people as resource to be utilized. This form the box that will influence your behavior and thinking subconsciously. Understanding this can reduce the influence and gain back control of your own growth. Yeah, it is easier said than done, I know. Since the time I became aware of this 10 years ago, I noticed more organizations are challenging the box. Usually not a whole company, but pockets of it, and I'm aware that it is not easy.
Hearing what you're saying, it seems like this is kind of related to how agile should work in a way. And switching the topic a little bit now to agile, right? I mean, agile is your bread and butter. You've been agile coach, you have Scrum certifications and all that. You also work with Bas, who invented less. Obviously, Scrum has been around for like many years now. And in fact, the popularity is pretty huge. But I see personally, in my opinion, that there are people who are now being skeptical about Agile and Scrum, thinking of it maybe it's a scam. When people come with the title Scrum Master, oh, is he a scam master? That kind of thing. So, can you maybe clarify a bit about Agile state at the moment in the industry? And what do you think are some of the misconceptions that people see in Agile?
I'm going to clarify briefly what Agile and Scrum are first before share my thoughts about the misconception. Agile is a manifesto containing 4 values and 12 principles written by a group of programmers in 2001 who are frustrated by the traditional development processes at that time. So founders of Extreme Programming and Scrum were there, and they had been challenging the traditional development for many years before. The authors of Agile Manifesto had only thought it was a good meetup and didn't expect anything after that. But people found out and it became a movement. What this means is there were people who resonated with the authors in improving software development. Extreme Programming and Scrum became the most popular and often used in combination. Extreme programming has very useful technical practices like refactoring, pair programming, and continuous integration that helps to reduce the feedback loop in development. Some of these practices were stolen from the good parts of traditional development like code review. And when you turn the frequency up, it becomes pair programming, thus called extreme. For Scrum, there are 3 keys. First is cross-functional and self-managing team. As you can imagine, this is a bigger change in your organization compared to adopting a technical practice like refactoring. It will challenge the box, and you need different type of skills for that. Second is acknowledging that we are in a complex domain, and therefore we need to inspect and adapt on how and what we work. Third is acknowledging we are developing products and not projects. So it is common to have teams use Scrum along with a few technical practices from extreme programming. Let's talk about misconception. Most of the misconceptions I came across are the lack of understanding. I met a person in Agile Meetup and he told me that they were using daily stand-up. Therefore, they were doing Scrum. I have seen more than 10 times a developer created a task that says refactoring. But when I paired with him, he was rewriting and adding more functionalities. Knowing and understanding are very different things. When I come across a new term in an article or a book, in most cases, I only know and not yet understand. Unless I practice it along with good guidance, I may not increase my understanding. Another common misconception is led from the people being forced to do Agile or Scrum. It could be the headquarters wanted various development sites to have Agile Scrum in their contract, or a company's management roll out an Agile-wide adoption initiative. These are breeding ground for just show the motion without real change. On certifications, if you are the organization, how can you easily know that people are qualified for something? Certifications. Though this thinking is flawed, most companies still do it because it is easier to manage by numbers. So they send people for certifications, which creates the demand. Suppliers use this dynamic to create certifications to fuel the demand. I want to highlight that certified Scrum Master doesn't mean you understand and skilled at it. The reason we still have certifications is because this dynamic in the industry is too strong that if we don't, it is hard to share our experience with people in public trainings. And we are always upfront about the proof in certifications to our participants.
Yeah, I find that also this is quite dangerous, right? Because as we all know, people tend to like overhype sometimes about a certain practices like Agile, DevOps, SRE, CI/CD. There are so many things, right? So what do you think can be done in order to put back Agile to what it was originally intended for, to rule out all this misconception, or even if you want to advise people who really want to go dive deep into this Scrum or Agile, right? What should they be focusing on?
Focus on the essence. One approach that I tend to like to think is that ignore these terms, Scrum, Agile stuff, but think about how do you improve your work? What are the challenges you are meeting today? What have you tried to improve it? And then what have you not tried? Who can you seek out for to get guidance? Whether you're on the right direction or not. And if you have this thinking of trying to improve your work every day and also trying to understand the broad perspective, the things that you do, who is going to use it? Who will get the benefits of it? Who is this valuable for? How is this relate to the end customer? So the thinking of this and also how do I know this is what they want? Am I actually on the right direction? How do I know who can ask for whether is this the right direction? Maybe you need to ask the customers, you need to ask someone else. Who am I depending on? What is the assumption I'm making? Is this assumption still valid? Or am I trying to mind read what other people are thinking? I need to check. So therefore, I need to ping someone as early as possible. This is the kind of feedback, getting very tight feedback. I think this is one of the essence.
Hearing from what you're saying, it doesn't work just for like a group of small teams, right? Being certified Scrum, and then they should be able to incorporate that to the whole companies, right? I mean, in essence, Agile is about culture, ways of working, the ways of thinking as well. So I think it's more than just getting certifications. And probably, I don't know what's the best way for people or company in general to actually adopt Agile other than bringing a bunch of people like you who has experience a lot doing this and trying to inculcate that practices, that ways of thinking, that ways of working in order to be able to finally adopt these whole Agile practices. I mean, that's my take of it. Switching a little bit about, you mentioned so many times about mentors, learning from people who have experience before. I noticed that all the contributions that you have made to the community, especially in Singapore, right? I still remember that a few years back, we had these Agile conferences. We have so many great speakers and thought leaders, Martin Fowler, Ken Beck, and so many others, right? I think there's one thing that I see from you is that you seeking this kind of thought leaders to actually learn from them. What do you say about learning from all these people and going to workshop? And some of them are actually paid workshops, right? So do you think it's something that we as practitioners need to do continuously and frequently from time to time?
I think so. I think the reason I bring these people to here is because of the ease of access. The reason I do conferences here and bring people here is I was inspired when I went to the North America's Agile Conference in 2010, and there was thousands of people there. And you can just walk along the corridor and you see Martin Fowler, you see Uncle Bob, and then you say hi to them, then you have some discussions with them. So I realized that Singapore is so far away from where these ideas are being originated. So I want to make it easier for people to access by bringing them here. So I provide opportunities, and I believe people who turn up, most of them, in fact, over the time I got to know quite a few of them who often turn up some of the workshops that I organize, including you as well. No, these are the people that are seeking for learning, for guidance, and looking for different perspectives. Because these workshops are not frequent. They are once in a blue moon, and either you get it now or never. So there are people who even want to pay themselves for these workshops. Right off there, I got the right people who have this thirst for learning. And I'm not sure if this is something that I would say everybody should do it, because there are multiple factors. The prices that I set in the workshops is at a cost price to make it possible for people to attend. But there are also people who couldn't attend because they will have to fork out on it. They will have to self-sponsor themselves. company wouldn't sponsor. And I think there are financial matters that even people who wants it, they may not be able to attend it. And there are also people who don't find a relationship to that. So if I were to say that, no, you should go for this workshop, but if they can't find a relationship, there is a disconnection. It may not be the content is bad, but it may not be at the right time. Or it may be really that this content is not relevant to this person at this point in time. And I fully accept that. So what I would rather encourage is that people to think for themselves. It can be a very short term how they want to improve their work right now. And usually that would lead them to find more answers to the questions that they have. And probably one of these workshops could connect.
Stanley, I realized also looking back at your career in the last few years, you moved out of OddE for a while, for like 1 year, joining GovTech. And before that, you told me that you had a thinking process behind it. So can you share a little bit what made you make that decision, and also what have you learned going back to the industry for like 1 year or so before you joined back OddE now?
So in OddE, I'm often being an external person. That is, I'm not the internal staff. So I don't get the internal bureaucracies and processes that is required expected of an employee, a typical employee. Being in this external position for a long time, I see things, of course, on the outside the box perspective. I also acknowledge that I'm missing, or maybe I forgot how it was like 10 years ago when I was still an employee of a corporation. This is about empathy as well. The people that I coach, software developers that I pair with them, what are they actually struggling with in the company? A question pop up. I do not know this question. I know that knowing this question or this answer can help me improve my work in the future in coaching them. So therefore, my action is to join a company. I did this deliberately for a 1 year experiment. 1 year experiment, join a large corporation, and at that time I have two choices. In the end, I decided to join GovTech with the help of Stephen Cole. It's also interesting to join him at that time. He's under government digital service. I got to see what kind of leadership he is in the company. So eventually I joined that, and I'm a subcon to Ministry of Manpower as a software developer. I think I enjoy that a lot. Although I struggle a lot as well. Like the first thing I struggle is that I have to reach the office, follow the office hours. 9 o'clock or 9:30 to reach there and then leave by 6 or 7 o'clock. Back in OddE, there's no timing, there's no work hours kind of concept. So I struggled that for quite a bit, and then I also get to have performance appraisals. 10 years, I need to do performance appraisals on myself again. I have a supervisor, I have a tech lead, this hierarchy of things, and there is managers and so on. When I joined, I didn't expect what I would learn. I'm just open-minded and being a obedient staff, try myself to be in that position and what will happen. What comes in the first 3 months is that as I pair program or work on the functionalities, working on programming, I somehow have an imagination that I have this soul spirit that goes behind me, seeing myself at this position and comparing myself more than 10 years ago before I joined OddE as a software developer. And then this two-person, how Stanley was like back then, and then how is he now? The things that he would think, the things that he would say, the things he would communicate and do are very, very, very different. So I didn't know that I could get that kind of reflection on myself. So I'm very surprised on that. So that first is self-awareness. I learned more about myself, the difference that I have that is probably more than 10 years apart when I was still a software developer. The other part learning is also in the past, I may not actually ask the customers or the users. I may not validate my assumptions with them that much. I would keep on coding. But now I would find ways to validate my assumptions much, much earlier on. Like there's one case which is typical is that you have a backlog item per backlog item user story, for example, to do some functionality in this screen. So then typical developer would just, same as myself in the past, would just look into that, or what are the statements or in the Jira ticket, what it says, and then I'll try to code according to that. So what I did differently this time is that I come up with specifications, executable specifications in Cucumber. So coming up with a scenario, if this happens, and then if this is some of the inputs, and then based on the user action, what is the expected output? I come up with one scenario with my pair first. My pair was quite eager to get onto the code. Well, I
Mm.
was like, hold on, wait, I don't quite understand. And also because I'm new to the domain. So I come up with one scenario first, and then I check with him, is this what you understand? And then he says, I'm not sure, I think so. But maybe let's ask the product owner. Then we pull the product owner in. And then she sees and then, no, I think there's something different.
Oh,
Immediately we validate our understanding on the business level. Can
right.
you imagine we went into code and we think that this is how it is? We trust the documentation. So I never work at this level that deeply as much as when I was as an agile coach back in Audi.
Mm.
So, but I can also see how this challenges my peers around me as well.
Yeah.
I often bring out perspectives that they haven't thought about. There is another conversation with my pair. I think there was an integration work, and he wanted to create these classes because that's what the task said. I asked him, why do you need these classes? He couldn't answer. During our reflections, he said he should perhaps first think about why he needs those before jumping to code.
That's very good learning. Yeah.
So interestingly, I'm supposed to be a software developer coding. At the end, after the close to the end of 1 year, my colleagues told me that no, thanks for your coaching. I don't deliberately want to coach, but it happens to be.
So having experienced all this, first, of course, you improve yourself internally, your self-awareness and things like that. You also have seen all these working practices could be done better. So now coming back to Audi, putting your head back as an HR coach, what can you probably now share with all your customers about what you have experienced from that 1 year and things that they should be either like focusing on or maybe thinking of improving instead of just hire a coach and everything will be okay?
I think that it is less of that part where I could tell them that what they should do. There is more about my empathy on the teams that I work with now that I'm engaged. That in the past, I used to have this expectation that we pair program for some time, or maybe I gave some workshops. I think you should know these topics. But when I see that you don't, then I have this feeling that no, you're not really learning, or no, is there some problem with how I teach? I begin to be more empathized that they have their struggles because of the other kind of policies, expectation of them from the company. They may not be able to pick up these skills as much as I hope. And that is okay.
Mm.
I begin to accept this fact. And with this information, it also helps me to revise my expectations of a coaching engagement with my sponsors. So maybe they expect that, oh, you're here for 1 month, and then I expect the developers will be level up immediately. So I would be able to bring out some examples of what they're struggling with, and that deters them from learning as quickly as you would wish that they have.
Right. So, Stanley, towards the end of every episode, I would ask my guests about their 3 technical leadership wisdoms that they would like to share for the listeners. So, would you be able to share what do you think are your 3 tech lead wisdoms?
First, I would consider the word tech lead as a leadership is an ability. It's ability that anyone in software development could have. It's not necessary that you must be in the tech lead position. So as a new joiner, or even you are an experienced software developer or product developer, one of the things that I find very valuable and yet lacking is having a broad perspective. Broad perspective comes in different ways. It can be knowing your domain, your business domain in a broader scope. It can be, instead of just focusing on one component of your application, you could understand how it all links up together, right from code to building, packaging, testing to production. And it can also be a broad perspective in the sense that understanding the dynamics in your company or how you guys work. For example, maybe in your team right now, you do have a business analyst and you have a tester and you are a developer. And broad perspective also means that you understand, you do not just focusing on programming, but you also understand what is required of getting a good test result, how to come up with test cases. You're also open to understand how to analyze requirements, how to actually talk to users or customers. Without this perspective of your peers, maybe you're in a specialized role, it is very hard for you to collaborate with them. Collaboration is not keeping my specialty as my specialty and then working with them in this manner. You can't get collaboration from that. You get collaboration from understanding the other disciplinary skills, and then you can anticipate and you can empathize what they need so that you can work with them better by providing them, being more sharper in providing information to them, being sharper in asking for specific information. So that is a broad perspective. The other skill is listening. It is very common if you are just starting out as a junior programmer, developer, through a few years, I often found, depending on your culture as well, there is more about winning your argument than listening what your peer, where he comes from, what brought his or her argument. If you have that perspective, then you would ask more questions and you would be able to listen better. There are different levels of listening. Typical level 1 listening means that I listen to form an opinion so that I can win my argument. The second level of listening and the third level is more towards really understanding what is behind this person says. Does this person have certain fears or worries or concerns? And then instead of sticking to what they say literally, we ask questions to elicit what they are feeling about it. With this, it helps yourself to understand other people more. People will open up and you would have a better conversation with them. The third thing is mentorship. It is hard. I've been in this journey and it took me 8 years to find an ideal mentor that I would learn from. I think I gave up at one point in time, but then I found it. So my assumption is that eventually you'll find a mentor. Look for Michael Ching. His developer community is great. He connects people together. You have that opportunity that I don't have before. Back in the time where communities are still more rare, people don't come out and talk about things that much. Join the communities and see who you can meet and learn from. Within your company, if you find there are people who is interested in improving, those are potentially good mentors that you can learn from. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stanley, for sharing all your knowledge, your experience, and especially your unique point of view. I personally myself have learned a lot, and I hope all the listeners here could also use this knowledge and level up your understanding about Agile and also what you should do in order to improve yourself. So one final question, Stanley, how do people find and connect with you online?
They can join the Agile Singapore Meetup group. Facebook as well, you can Facebook message me. I could provide my email address after this, so you can reach out to me as well.
Thanks again for tuning in to this episode and for staying till the end. I learned a lot from Stanley, and I hope you also find a lot of useful insights that you can immediately apply in your work and practices. If you find this episode useful, share it with your friends and colleagues so that they can also get the benefit from this conversation. Please subscribe and follow TechLead Journal on your favorite podcast app and also social media. I'll see you in the next episode, and until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay agile, and stay productive.